SustFest, definitely part of the mainstream of climate and eco action. And that seems to be a great place, therefore, for asking this question: what's missing in the environmental movement? Next slide, please. What kind of organisation or movement do we most need in the space? Next slide, please. Well, how about one that takes seriously these things? There are no shortcuts. There is no quick tech fix. There is no way we're going to solve this through just voting. There is no way we're going to get through this by just consuming in the right way. There isn't going to be a revolution, at least not anytime soon. There are no shortcuts. So we need to act ambitiously on medium and long-term horizons, not fantasizing that we're going to solve this overnight. And that means that the majority must be brought on side. There is never going to be the kind of change that we need unless most people are at the very least willing for it to happen. The weather is gradually recruiting more and more people. We can take for granted that the kind of thing that we're trying to bring here is something which is going with the grain of the times. What we need to do is accelerate it and make it even more smart and join it up. The transformation is inevitable. It can be accelerated. And this comes back to the point about there are no shortcuts. Adaptation is part of the picture, and I'll come back to that point. We are not going to solve this. There is not going to be a smooth, orderly, green transition. Anyone who tells you that there is peddling you a lie for the sake of making this seem easier than it's actually going to be. And part of what that means is it's going to be a very rough and bumpy ride, adaptation, building resilience, preparedness, including for disasters. Got to be part of the picture, as I say. I'll come back to that. Next slide, please. So, this is what we hope stands up and fits that bill. This is what we think is missing in the environmental movement. An approach which is honest about the difficulty of the task and serious about bringing most people on board. We've called it the Climate Majority Project. It does what it says on the tin. There already is a climate majority in the sense that there already are a majority of people in pretty much every country who think that we're in trouble and want to do something about it. But most of them are not really doing anything. Most of them are not aware of just how much trouble that we're in. The climate majority needs to be deepened. It needs to be activated. It needs to be made aware of itself. And that's the project. Next slide, please. Well, you've done it already. Very good. Thanks, Dan. So, this is us, the Climate Majority Project. We're UK-based. We're trying to prove concept here in the UK. And if it works here, hopefully it'll spread. We're already liaising with people overseas. We're aiming to accelerate effective, coordinated action across society by a broad-based coalition of climate-concerned citizens. So this essentially is our mission statement in the context of the grave crisis of which we're all aware. Next slide. And this is basically what we do. We try to understand and unlock the barriers to mainstream action. Why is it that most people are still not involved? And we make targeted interventions that seek to overcome those barriers. We incubate citizen climate initiatives, as already highlighted by Kim, and I'll come back to that point and point out some of those initiatives in a moment. We do research and thought leadership. We engage in campaigns, I'll tell you about those in a second, and also the media work that we do. So it's a wide range of activity as befits something which has this wide ambition. Next slide. So here are our 4 strands. This is, in the technical term, our theory of change, summed up very, very briefly. So I'll take you through it, because this is quite important. So firstly, let's start with this, awareness of our collective power. It's really important that we understand that we are already a majority and that we're only just starting to come to awareness of that. But as we do come to awareness of that, awareness of our collective power, well, then we have that kind of power, and that can manifest in all sorts of ways. It can manifest in things like voting and consumer behavior and so on, but it can also manifest in local citizen activity. It can manifest in change in workplaces, in professions, churches, religious organizations, for example, as represented here at the SustFest today. We need to be aware of our power, and this is how the excitement, frankly, about the situation that we're in can really get going. We need to build communities for inner work and support. The inner dimension of this very difficult situation that we're in is crucial. Too many activist organizations and professional organizations and government initiatives don't give any attention to this. They don't acknowledge that it's actually really difficult to live with the truth about the difficult climate and nature situation that we are in. So we need to pay attention to this inner dimension, and I'll come back to that point. When we do that, when we build communities for inner work and support, when we build shared mental resilience, when we develop our climate courage, if you will, then we're in a position better to hear the truth, the difficult truth about the climate situation. We can deepen engagement then with the truth about climate, because people who don't have that kind of mutual support, people who don't have a sort of safety net around them, people who are still in the sort of general societal taboo about really facing up to how bad things are, they don't want to face up to it because it feels overwhelming. But if you have that community for inner work and support around you, then you can engage more deeply with the truth. And that's what we need to do. And when all of those things are happening, when we're aware that this kind of phenomenon is happening, is growing, and is bound to grow more because the weather is our biggest recruiter, when we have support from others around us, when we engage more deeply with the truth, well, then we're in a position to take effective action together. Pathways to effective action, obviously, in the end, is in a way what it's all about. Next slide. This is a graphic representation of our theory of change that I've just described to you. It's a little bit complicated. What it's basically trying to show is that all of these things link up with each other. So, for example, as I've just described, on the upper right there, the truth could be held to bear. Processing it gets easier with mutual support. So that's a way in which the communities of inner work and support link with the deepening engagement with the truth. And these connections are there between all these elements of our theory of change. In other words, you've got to have them all together. Most organizations are only good at one or two of these things. Maybe they're good at doing some effective pragmatic action, but they don't offer people any support and they don't really take you deeper into the truth. Others are very good at raising the alarm about the difficult truth, but are not good at offering pragmatic, effective actions that people can then take. You need them all together. If you want to study this diagram in more detail, then you can buy the Climate Majority Project book, where there's a version of it on the table over there, as Kim said. So I won't leave that up much longer. We'll just pause for a second so you can take in any particular aspect of it you want. But the basic idea is it's all part of the same picture. It has to be. Next slide, please. So now let's go into the theory of change, in any case, in a little more detail. So I started with collective awareness. Action feels pointless if we're alone. Knowing that others share our concerns motivates us, gives us a sense of, oh, it's possible, it's not just me. There's something that we can do here together, and we're growing together in this. Stats show, polls show, we don't yet realize that others share our climate concern to the extent that they do. For example, this handy little poll. People were asked, would you give 1% of your income to address climate breakdown? 69% of people said they would. Then people were asked to guess, how many other people do you think would be willing to? And people thought that only 43% would. So, see, quite a lot more were actually willing to do it than thought other people would be willing to do it. And that kind of finding is replicated in poll after poll. Other people are not as bad as we think they are. So, deepening engagement with the truth. This is obviously crucial. The truth is fearful. But full motivation requires full awareness of the depth of the crisis. If there is an emergency of an ordinary kind, you don't say, I only want to hear the good things about it. Right? Imagine a government that said to its civil servants or to its intelligence services, please, only good news, okay? Just keep it positive, right? It's obviously a really stupid thing to do. Right? We have to be willing to engage with the truth, but that isn't easy. People do want to know what's really happening. So here's a poll from Ipsos Mori. 51% of Brits think optimism is important when you're being given bad news. Fair enough. But 68%, significantly more, think it's important that bad news is honestly shared, whether the outlook is optimistic or not. So most people say, I want you to give it to me straight, even if it's really rough. I want to hear the truth. Right? And here's one part of the truth. You will probably have heard of the 1.5 degrees of average global overheat maximum temperature goal, which all the countries in the world have agreed at the Paris Agreement. You may not understand the details of it. Basically, it's about trying to stop the global temperature from going up too much, right? What this slide tries to show is it's in the rearview mirror. Right, that is the bad news. The truth is that it's gone. This is very clear over the last year. If you've been following climate news at all, temperatures have dramatically shifted up around the world over the last year. We have to give up the fantasy that we're going to be able to stay within the safe zone. We are out of the safe zone. That is a key part of the difficult truth that we need to engage with. In a sense, I've been giving this talk and telling you about what the Climate Majority Project is trying to do. But remember, the climate majority is you, right? The climate majority is the people in this hall. The climate majority is most of the people in St. Albans, and so on, and so forth, right? So it's not about me, it's not about us, it's about you, it's about everyone. It's about the majority coming together. And we know that our leaders are way off the pace on this. So we have to step up and take responsibility as best we can and start to shame them into action. And then I've italicized there at the end, by building resilience in and around our local communities. Yeah? This is a sine qua non, this is absolutely essential. We have to mean it, and this is the great thing about focusing on adaptation. It is a way of meaning it, right? It's not about a colorless, odorless gas, which is going to make everything really bad by 2050 if we don't make a change by 2050. It's about damage that is happening here and now, all around the world. You can see it on Twitter or wherever, anytime now. We need to start preparing for it right now, where we live. And once we do, then we're awake and we're waking other people up. Yeah? And that's arguably the most important thing we can do, and a crucial reason why we emphasize the importance of adaptation. And that is my presentation.